we expect that non-Soviet threats to U.S. interests will command even greater attention. In reality, comparable attention, but adjusted to circumstances both in deed and in word. As before, we must have the means to reinforce our units forward deployed, or to project power into areas where we have no permanent presence. This is necessary, particularly in the Middle East, because of the free world's reliance on energy supplies from this pivotal region, where the threats to our interests that require direct military engagement cannot be laid at the Kremlin's door, contrary to decades of pretense now shelved as useless. The sudden revisions elicited no comment. At the time, Saddam Hussein was not among the non-Soviet threats. Rather, he was still a favored friend and ally, and recipient of ample aid and support. Military commanders echoed the political echelon, emphasizing that the end of the Cold War would not change security policies significantly. In fact, the majority of the crises we have responded to since the end of World War II have not directly involved the Soviet Union. Marine General A.M. Gray observed, quite accurately, in May 1990. The problems remain, as before, insurgencies, resulting from the underdeveloped world's growing dissatisfaction over the gap between rich and poor nations, which may jeopardize regional stability and our access to vital economic and military resources on which the United States and its allies will become more and more dependent. We must therefore maintain within our active force structure a credible military power projection capability with the flexibility to respond to conflict across the spectrum of violence throughout the globe, to ensure unimpeded access both to developing economic markets throughout the world and to the resources needed to support our manufacturing requirements. This basic thinking remained in force a decade later. New Millennium Intelligence projections expect globalization, in the standard doctrinal sense, to continue on course. Its evolution will be rocky, marked by chronic financial volatility and a widening economic divide. It will bring deepening economic stagnation, political instability, and cultural alienation, which will foster ethnic, ideological, and religious extremism, along with the violence that often accompanies it. Much of that violence directed against the United States. A 2004 intelligence update expects the perceptions of the contradictions and uncertainties of a globalized world to come even more to the fore than is the case today, as gaps will widen between those countries benefiting from globalization and those underdeveloped nations or pockets within nations that are left behind. The pockets happen to be immense, dramatically so in the poster children of globalization. The 2004 intelligence assessment also warns that over the next 15 years, the increased centrality of ethical issues, old and new, has the potential to divide worldwide publics and challenge U.S. leadership on such matters as the environment and climate change, privacy, cloning and biotechnology, human rights, international law regulating conflict, and the role of multilateral institutions. The United States increasingly will have to battle world public opinion, which has dramatically shifted since the end of the Cold War, a subdued allusion to the fact that the Bush II administration significantly increased fear and often hatred of the United States. Huntington's observations about the need to create misimpressions to control the domestic population illustrate what should be the merest truism. Professions of benign intent by leaders should be dismissed by any rational observer. They are near universal and predictable, and hence carry virtually no information. The worst monsters, Hitler, Stalin, Japanese fascists, Suharto, Saddam Hussein, and many others, have produced moving flights of rhetoric about their nobility of purpose. The same holds for peace institutes and endowments for democracy. If we are serious, we will ask about their actions, paying little attention to their words. an elementary observation that has inspired a rich literature from Pascal to Zamyatin to Orwell. The democratization bandwagon. With all of this in mind, let us turn to Iraq and the revived passion for democracy promotion that is held to be central to Bush's grand strategy. Welcoming the Iraqi elections in January 2005, the Foreign Minister of Iran declared that Iran supports the wishes of Iraqi citizens for a democratic government, living prosperously in a unified nation and expecting peaceful relationships with their neighbors, a fully sovereign Iraq in a stable and peaceful region of democratic states. Rational observers will view Iran's dedication to democracy promotion with due skepticism, and the same should be true when Bush, Blair, Rice, and their associates issue similar pronouncements. Far more so, in fact, for reasons that it takes some effort to ignore. The most glaring is occasionally, though very rarely, articulated. Thus, Middle East specialist Augustus Richard Norton writes that as fantasies about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction were unmasked, the Bush administration increasingly stressed the democratic transformation of Iraq, and scholars jumped on the democratization bandwagon. Before the fantasies were unmasked, there was, of course, occasional invocation of the standard pieties about democratic transformation, but not beyond the usual meaningless norm. In the documents reviewed in the most extensive study of the justifications for the Iraq invasion by John Prados, such terms as democracy are not even indexed. To put it plainly, while asking us to appreciate the sincerity of their eloquent orations about their sudden conversion to democratic transformation, U.S. and U.K. leaders were also informing us that they are brazen liars, since they had driven their countries to war because of a single question: will Saddam abandon his WMD programs? By August 2003, when the tale was falling to pieces, the press reported that as the search for illegal weapons in Iraq continues without success, the Bush administration has moved to emphasize a different rationale for the war against Saddam Hussein, using Iraq as the linchpin to transform the Middle East, and thereby reduce the terrorist threat to the United States. More accurately, risk enhancing the terrorist threat, which happened, as even their own intelligence agencies confirm. The timing alone suffices to undermine the credibility of the different rationale, and that is only the bare beginning. Nonetheless, the new rationale quickly became Holy Writ. The sincerity of our leader passed beyond challenge after the President's address on freedom in Iraq and Middle East at the 20th anniversary of the National Endowment for Democracy in Washington on November 6, 2003. The single question was dispatched to the memory hole, replaced by Bush's messianic mission to bring democracy to the Middle East, in what may be the most idealistic war fought in modern times, inspired by idealist-in-chief Paul Wolfowitz. With considerable effort, I have found only the rarest exceptions to this stance in media and intellectual commentary, though there are indeed critics who warn that the noble and generous vision may be beyond our reach. It may be too costly, or the beneficiaries may be too backward to benefit from our solicitude. Some skeptics agree with New York University law professor Noah Feldman, who was assigned the task of teaching Iraqis about democracy and preparing their constitution against their will, but warned that if you move too fast, that is, as fast as Iraqis wanted to, the wrong people could get elected. More generally, David Brooks explained, as Noah Feldman observes, people in the Middle East don't always act rationally, despite our patient tutelage and Britons before us. Evidence for the Brooks-Feldman assessment of people in the Middle East was provided just as President Bush formally revealed his messianic mission at the National Endowment for Democracy anniversary celebration. A Gallup poll in Baghdad provided the opportunity for respondents to join Western intellectuals.